Hello everyone, and welcome back to JAS Reviews. My name is James, and on this channel I do reviews of both music and movies, along with the occasional commentary piece, so if any of that sounds interesting to you, then I'd appreciate it if you left this video a like, and subscribe to my channel to see more content like that. And today I am going to be doing my first official individual movie review of the year. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded a video, it's just been really busy lately, but I am sort of back in a point where I can start doing reviews again, and as I said on my last video, I am going to be starting to do more individual reviews, and that is going to be the case today, as I am going to be talking about the third movie in the Creed series, which are considered the sort of spiritual successors to the Rocky movies. Now, actually, I didn't see any of the Creeds until all this year, actually, and Creed 1 and 2 I only saw last month, so I am fairly new to this franchise. I have, of course, seen the original Rocky, but I don't think I've actually seen any of the other Rockies. That's something I probably need to get on just to see what they're like. I really liked both of them. I think the first Creed is actually pretty excellent and nearly pitch perfect in many ways. And Creed 2, while not quite as good as the first one, made an interesting, sympathetic story for the Russian characters, specifically the Russian that Rocky fought against in the fourth Rocky movie, and sort of made a redemption arc for them that I think worked pretty well in terms of the movie and made them pretty sympathetic. In this third Creed movie, Rocky is not in it at all. Not even as a cameo or anything like that. He is entirely absent, and of course that makes the big question, can Adonis Creed work in a movie basically on his own without Rocky next to him, without Rocky being an attached name that people are already familiar with? And in this story, that question becomes even bigger because Michael B. Jordan is also the director of the movie in addition to the star, and this is his directorial debut, so there's a lot of interesting things happening with this movie that made it sort of an interesting one in the Creed trilogy. And in this movie, it follows a pretty intriguing plot line where Rocky is reunited with a childhood friend that he had named Damien, and the two of them grew up together under some pretty traumatic circumstances in a group home, and basically, Damien is wanting to sort of have the redemption that he never got as a kid because he was imprisoned for doing something to help Adonis, which I don't want to spoil. And Adonis basically agrees and lets him fight, but things happen in the movie that makes it to where Adonis basically has to fight Damien and sort of take him down, and they become big rivals, but with all this trauma of their childhood attached behind them. And it creates a really interesting story of a very complex rivalry. So Creed 3 as a movie, in my opinion, really works. I really enjoyed this movie, and I thought it was actually a little better than the second Creed. Not significantly, I would say, but it was a better experience for me, and I think it brought back some of the energy that Creed 2 was maybe lacking, especially in the boxing scenes. Let's go ahead and start with those parts, because they're really uniquely filmed in this movie. Michael B. Jordan, in interviews, has talked about how the boxing scenes were actually inspired by anime. You could tell that the fights were inspired by anime, and it feels like something that shouldn't necessarily work, especially in the context of something like boxing, but it really does, especially this ending fight that is so much fun in what it does. It creates this very colorful fight with a lot of creative imagery that is sort of also serving as symbols about how the two main characters feel about one another. And the punches and the fights feel very visceral, but also something like out of an action movie. It doesn't feel too over the top, though. There's still a sense of groundedness going on, but the added layer of the anime touches makes it just all the more interesting and all the more like a really cool spectacle in many ways. Now, what I might actually like best about this movie is that it is not hinging, this time, on Adonis's relationship with Rocky. That's a lot of what it was hinging on in the first two movies, is the mentor relationship that these two have with one another. Now we see a lot more development for Adonis's relationships with the other people around him, including his now wife Bianca and his daughter, who is deaf. And I really like seeing him being more of a family man here and seeing what he is going through there, while also having to deal with some childhood trauma. I think it makes him maybe even a more vulnerable character here, where he was already vulnerable in the first two. I think we get to learn a lot more about him, and the aspect of learning about his childhood is super interesting and something that I really found myself attaching on to. And that is all in part due, or mainly due, really, to Michael B. Jordan's great performance in this movie. He is really shining here. Tessa Thompson is also really great here as Bianca. I really feel like the chemistry between her and Michael B. Jordan is super convincing in these movies, and that's probably partly because these two seem to have a real affection and friendship for one another in real life, so that chemistry definitely translates to on screen, and I think their relationship here might be at its best. We get to see them going through a lot of stuff here and laying out their vulnerabilities for one another, especially Bianca's, with the fact that she's a music producer now and can't necessarily perform her music anymore because she can't really hear as well as she used to, because she is going deaf herself, has to use hearing aids. And I really love the relationship that Adonis has with his daughter. It's very sweet, and I thought it was just one of the most charming parts of the movie. As much as I really like Michael B. Jordan's performance here, I think the highlight for me might actually be Jonathan Majors as his rival Damien. Man, his performance is excellent here. It is so layered, and while this character is a genuine antagonist to Adonis and might be his most menacing opponent yet, I would debate that he is for many reasons. I do think that Damien might be Adonis's most interesting opponent too, because there's a lot more backstory going on here. There's all this childhood friendship that they had, and the reasons why it was broken off are very heartbreaking in many ways, but also understandable. And you can sort of understand where Damien is coming from in terms of some of the resentment he holds towards Adonis. And I think Jonathan Majors really nails what his character is going through and makes for a very powerful performance, and one that is oftentimes pretty menacing in places. You really feel the intimidation of this character, and that it seems like at many places he could take down Adonis pretty easily if he wanted to. And that makes the fight at the end feel pretty weighty, because Adonis is once again put into a sort of underdog position like he was in the first movie, which is really interesting because he hasn't been fighting for a long time. I think Michael B. Jordan directed this movie very well. I think it was a pretty confident first debut. Like I said, the fight scenes are great. The training montage, while maybe a little cliched, was still working pretty well overall. It may have been a little more silly than some of the other ones, especially the very powerful way they intercut the training montage with Rocky's cancer in the first movie. That really worked super well, but I did enjoy it for what it was. Now, if there were any flaws I was to give this movie, and there aren't really that many, is that I wish maybe they had sort of maybe done an initial fight between Damien and Adonis instead of just going right into their ending matchup, one where Adonis was maybe being taken down a little more easily. I think that could have been interesting and shown how strong Damien was. And I also feel like maybe they take a little too long to get to the portion of where they're rivals. I understand they have to build certain things up, and they have to sort of establish some different things about their past, but it really isn't until the second half, or even you could sort of consider the ending third of the movie, where that stuff really does come to a head, and it does end up feeling a little rushed. It's not something that is really that bad to me, it's just something that I noticed. And like I said, the training montages are maybe a little cliched here, but they're not bad by any means, and they serve their purpose. And overall, I just don't really have a lot of problems with this movie. I think it is very strong as a whole. I think it does what it does very well. I think the performances are great across the board from our three leads, with Jonathan Majors really shining here. I know he's been getting a lot of praise lately, and I haven't really seen him in many movies lately, to be honest, but I can see why he's been getting so much recognition, because he really delivers something pretty impressive here. And overall, this movie is just such a great watch, and another one that I can see being just a huge crowd pleaser, considering that it just has an inspirational story with a lot of sympathetic background for two complex main characters that a lot of audiences are going to like. So I'm going to be giving this a strong 4 out of 5 stars. It could end up being one of my favorite movies of the year. I really did enjoy this. So yeah, that was my review of Creed 3. What were your thoughts on this movie if you've seen it? Let me know in the comments. And once again, my name is James. I do reviews of both music and movies, along with the occasional commentary piece. So please subscribe to this channel if any of that sounds interesting to you. And stay tuned for another review coming very soon. But until then, I will see you all in the next video.